My name is Taylor Hutchison, and I'm going to show you how to set up testing in WebStorm. This is going to be part one of a two-part series. This first video, I'm just going to go over the basics of setting up Karma and Jasmine in WebStorm. In the next video, I'll show a little bit more advanced features and show off things like Ajax. So I've got a little demo project, and let me jump over to Firefox and show you what it is. Basically, I'm just asking for the user to enter in a name in this input field, and it has to follow these 5 rules. It cannot be empty, cannot contain spaces, must start with an uppercase letter, cannot be longer than 8 characters, and can't contain non-alphanumeric characters. So the name Taylor should work, passes all the rules, but the name Hutchison should not work because it's 9 characters long. So if I check it, it does not pass. Okay, so that's basically it. So let's jump back over to WebStorm. So all of those rules are represented as functions in this validate.js. And you can see, check if it's empty. First, take the name as an input and trim it. And if it comes out as empty, then return true because it was empty. And my little index.html file here just kind of ties all that together with this little script. Just check when the user clicks the check button and run all those functions on the value of the input field. So this is actually a pretty easy example, but imagine if your project was very big and you don't want to go through, or you can't go through each time you make a small change to one function. If those functions are linked together, you don't know what impact you'll have on your entire application. So that's sort of the value of testing. Testing gives you confidence that when you make changes, you haven't broken the whole thing in a way that you might not be able to predict. And fortunately, WebStorm makes testing incredibly easy. So I'm going to assume that you know or probably have installed Node.js. If you're not using Node.js on the server, that's fine, but you really do need to be using it in your development workflow. Node.js powers some of the great development tools out there, like Grunt and Gulp and Karma. Karma is what I'll be showing you today. So definitely check out, if you don't know what Node.js is, stop this video right now, go find out, install it on your machine, come back. Okay. So if you're new to WebStorm, you may not realize that you can access the terminal from inside WebStorm. And if it's not already loaded down here at the bottom, go to View, Tool Windows, and then Terminal. So let's load this up, and I'll just create a new terminal here. The first thing that we're going to do is create a package file, a package.json file. And normally, you might think you would only want to do this if you're going to create a Node module or deploy some type of Node application. But it actually has a lot of value if you want to share your code. Let's say you upload your code to GitHub. If somebody downloads that code, the package.json file makes it easy for them to set up the environment that you created with all the modules that you have a dependency on. So the way we do this is we just type npm init, right? And it's going to ask you a few questions, and we'll say, okay, the name is demo. It's going to try to pick out some defaults, the version 1.0.0, description, a demo. Just, you can accept all these, and you can always change them later. Basically it's going to add the package file to the root. We'll just say MIT, yes. Okay, and you can see that the package file was added right there. Okay, now we need to install some dependencies, and we're going to install Karma. So we're going to do npm install Karma save dev, and I'll explain what save dev is in a minute. And the package manager is going to go out and fetch what we need, Karma, and we have one more to load after this. So sort of depends on your internet connection, how fast it is, but okay, now it's done. Okay, one more time, npm install karma CLI save dev. Okay, this is the command line into Karma. And if we look at the package file, what save dev did, the flag on the npm install, it declared these packages as development dependencies, different from another type of dependency. And this just lets Node know, lets the packet manager know that you only need this when you're developing your application. You don't need it for when it's deployed. So this is just, it's not necessary to set up the testing environment. It's just good practice. Okay, now that we have the Karma command line installed, and you can see all these things got added in this new Node modules folder. I see Karma and Karma command line. The actual commands are in this .bin folder. So what we're going to do is on the terminal, we're just going to say Node modules. We're going to access this folder, Karma init. This is sort of like npm init, but it's Karma init, and it's going to create another configuration file. So it's going to ask us a few questions. The way you can change is you can tab through the options, but we want to use Jasmine. It was the first one, so we're going to hit enter. We don't want to use require.js. I actually would like to use Firefox instead of Chrome, but you can use multiple browsers. Now it's asking us for where are our source files and our test files. Let's leave this blank for a minute and we'll come back to it. This is sort of the same thing, except it's asking what do we want to exclude. So this is very powerful, where you can say I want to include some of the JS files but not others. Some stuff is not really testable, so sometimes you want to if you have some code that's just not easily testable inside Karma, but it is in another type of test environment, then you can exclude it from Karma. So we'll just leave that blank from now. And we'll cover the watching file feature of Karma in the next video. So for now, we're just going to leave this as no. Okay. So a new file has been created called karma.conf.js. And you can see this is looks just like a normal Node module. It's got options, and one thing you want to make sure is that your base path is blank. This just means the root of the directory. So we see some of the options that we put in there. Jasmine, if we go down, Firefox is the browser. So these are all the options that we just told it in the terminal. And now we need to specify the files that we want to test. So right now we only have one JS file, and that's validate.js, the 5 functions that are checking to make sure that the input field meets all the criteria. So we're going to use wildcards to specify which files need to get loaded. And the files option here takes an array of strings, and we can use wildcards. So we'll say JS and then anything that matches this pattern. So anything that ends in .js, load that up inside the JS folder. We also need to load our tests, and we have this test folder over here, but there's nothing in it. So we know that's where we're going to put our tests. So let's go ahead and include that. We'll say tests, and then the same kind of thing, wildcard JS. Okay. We don't have anything to exclude at this moment, but this is where you would put that. If you had, for instance, another file like this inside your JS folder, you could explicitly exclude that from the testing, something like that. Okay. So we're going to save that, and the next step is to set up the configuration inside WebStorm. We're going to tell it that we're ready to use Karma. So we'll click on the new or add, click Karma. We're going to tell it where the configuration file is, and you can move this anywhere. It doesn't have to stay at the root, but we'll just call this Karma testing. Make sure your node interpreter is in the right place and your Karma package is in the right place. These shouldn't move around. It should be pretty simple to find out if this is in the right place. So click apply and OK. Okay, so now up here we have some new options. Karma testing is what we just set up in the configurations. And if we hit run, a couple things are going to happen. First, Firefox is going to load up because we told it that's the browser we want to run. And then it's going to try to execute the tests. So we'll click run. And you can see what's going to happen is after Firefox pops up, Karma is starting, connected. Okay, empty test suite because we haven't written any tests yet. So let's go ahead and write a test. So we're going to go into the test folder. We're going to create a new JavaScript file, and we're going to call it validate_test. Now, some testing frameworks require that you have test in the file name. Karma does not. And this is just kind of a convention to let you know, hey, this is a test file, not to be used in production. So we're using Jasmine now. We're moving away from Karma for a second. We're going to talk about Jasmine. Jasmine is what is known as behavior-driven design or behavior-driven development, which is, well, we'll just call it BDD because I can't remember what it stands for. But what you need to know about that is that it uses functions like describe, it, okay, the autocomplete feature is making this really hard, and expect. These are the big three functions that you're going to use. There's a lot more, but this is basically how you're going to write a test. So we'll say describe, and we'll call it the name validator. Give it a function as its second parameter. And within the describe function, we can actually have more describe functions to create a kind of hierarchy of testing. So the name validator, okay, now we want to describe the checking or checks for empty string. And these are just descriptors that help you understand what the test is supposed to be. And you'll see how they're used in a minute. So describe checks for empty string. It, and then by design, by convention, you should always use should in the beginning of the it function. So it should return true when the string is empty. And the whole idea behind BDD is that you can look at the test and it kind of reads sort of like English. It is easy to understand what is being expected of the test. So within the it function, we say expect check empty. And you can see that WebStorm knows all the functions. If we go back, it knows everything because it knows that we've got this validate.js loaded up. So when I start typing, I can see all those functions that I wrote inside validate.js. So we're going to do check empty. Empty takes a string. So we'll give it an empty string. And then we'll chain on to the end to be true. If I can get that right. Expect empty, and then an empty string basically, even though it's full of spaces, the way that the empty string works, it trims it all off. So any white space on either side. So this will be reduced, or it's supposed to be reduced down to just an empty string. So we expect check empty to be true. Expect check empty, and we can put as many expectations in here as we want. A, B, C, D. Just give it a arbitrary string to be false. So we're already sort of violating kind of a pattern up here, where we say it should return true when the string is empty, which is true. But if we want to be consistent, we need to maybe move this down to another it statement. It should return false when the string is not empty. And kind of having these descriptors helps you in the debugging process, so you know when you get an error on a particular expectation, you know where to look. It helps you sort of start the debugging process. It definitely doesn't solve it for you, but it definitely helps. So we've got some of these. Got a simple test running or written. So let's run it in Karma now. Okay, all of our tests pass. When everything turns green, that's good. And you can see it took a little less than half a second to do all that. And I'm expanding out the test results here, and you can see our individual it statements, right? You can see the hierarchy. So we have at the top the name validator. That's this description. Then underneath that, the checks for empty string. So you see how it kind of expands out in a tree. So let's introduce some deliberately bad tests. So we'll say checks for non-alpha characters. Takes a function. It should return true when the string has non-alphas. Expect check for check non-alpha. So we'll just say A, B, C, $D to be false. So the way we think this function works, it should be true, but we're saying to be false, just to see what happens when an error occurs. Okay, so I ran the tests, and this did not turn green. So something's gone wrong, and here it's telling me expected true to be false. I can kind of expand out. I see that the error occurred in the checks for non-alpha characters. And if I had a lot more in the hierarchy, I could see exactly which one it was. So should return true when the string is non-alpha. So I know to start looking here. And maybe I wrote the test wrong. And that's where you really rely on the way you describe the test. Did you write the test correctly based on how you described it? So let's make sure it's running correctly. Okay, we've changed the test, and all the test results came back. Everything passed. So that's testing with Karma and Jasmine in a nutshell. There are other test frameworks. There's other ways to do this. inside and outside of WebStorm, but this is the basics. And I hope this really helped you. Maybe if you were struggling setting this up on a Windows machine, because a lot of the tutorials online are for Mac and Linux. So in the next video, I'm going to be showing some more advanced features, how to use mock-up Ajax, things like that. So look forward to that. And just leave any comments or questions you have in the comments, and I'll check them and hopefully respond to them in the next video. Thank you.